A friend of mine bought an apartment in Business Bay, found a tenant, signed a 12-month contract, thought everything was perfect. 6 months in, the tenant stops paying rent. My friend thinks, okay, I'll just kick them out and find someone else. 3 months later, he's still stuck with the same tenant, hasn't collected a single dirham, and he spent over 15,000 dirhams on legal fees trying to figure out what went wrong. Here's what nobody tells you about Dubai. The rental laws heavily favor tenants. You cannot just kick someone out because they stopped paying or because you want your property back. There's a legal process, there are specific timelines, and if you mess up even one step, you're starting over from zero. Today, I'm going to break down exactly how tenant eviction works in Dubai, the legal grounds you actually have, the timelines you need to follow, and most importantly, how to avoid getting stuck in this situation in the first place. Let's get into it. Before we get into the process, let me explain why this is so important and why I personally moved away from long-term rentals entirely. I own and operate 9 properties in Dubai. Our family has been investing in real estate for nearly 100 years. We've dealt with tenants in different legal systems, and I can tell you, Dubai's rental laws are uniquely challenging for landlords. I've had tenants where I had legal issues, couldn't get my money back, and the process dragged on for months because the government fundamentally favors tenants here. You cannot easily kick them out. You can be stuck with a bad tenant for years if you don't know what you're doing. That's actually one of the main reasons I switched entirely to short-term rentals. Guests stay a few days or weeks, they pay upfront through the platform, and if there's ever an issue, they're gone and the next guest checks in. No legal battles, no eviction process, no headaches. But if you're doing long-term rentals or thinking about it, you absolutely need to understand how eviction works before you sign that first contract. The legal framework. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Tenant eviction in Dubai is governed by Law number 26 of 2007 and its amendments, plus RERA, which is the Real Estate Regulatory Agency that oversees all rental disputes. The most important thing to understand is this: you cannot evict a tenant just because you feel like it or just because you found someone willing to pay more rent. There are only specific legal grounds for eviction, and even when you have valid grounds, you must follow exact procedures and timelines. If you skip a step or file the wrong paperwork, the case gets thrown out and you're back to square one, sometimes losing months in the process. There are 2 main categories of eviction in Dubai. The first is eviction at the end of a tenancy contract, where you're not renewing and you want the tenant to leave. The second is eviction during a tenancy contract, where something has gone wrong and you need them out before the contract ends. The rules and timelines are completely different for each, so let's break them down separately. Eviction at end of contract. Let's start with evicting a tenant when their contract is ending and you don't want to renew. You might think this is simple. Contract ends, tenant leaves, done. But in Dubai, tenants have something called the right to remain, which means they can actually stay in the property even after the contract ends unless you have valid legal grounds and you've given proper notice. There are only 3 valid reasons to not renew a tenancy and ask a tenant to leave. Reason number 1, you want to sell the property. You must prove you genuinely intend to sell, and the tenant has the right to remain until a sale is completed. Even then, the new owner might have to honor the existing tenancy depending on timing. Reason number 2, you want to use the property yourself or have an immediate family member use it. This means you personally, your spouse, your children, or your parents want to live there. And here's the catch: you must actually move in and stay for at least 2 years. If you re-rent the property within 2 years, the former tenant can sue you for compensation. Reason number 3, you need to demolish or significantly renovate the property in a way that makes it uninhabitable during the work. You'll need documentation from relevant authorities proving this is necessary. For any of these reasons, you must give the tenant 12 months written notice through notary public or registered mail before the contract end date. Not email, not WhatsApp. Official notarized notice or registered mail with proof of delivery. If you don't give 12 months notice, you cannot evict at the end of that contract period. The tenancy automatically renews, and you have to wait for the next cycle. Let me repeat that because it's crucial. 12 months notice, delivered officially before the contract ends. Miss this deadline and you're stuck for another year minimum. Now let's talk about evicting a tenant during an active contract, before it ends. This is usually because something has gone wrong. The most common reason is non-payment of rent. If your tenant stops paying, here's the exact process you must follow. First, you send a formal payment notice through notary public, giving the tenant 30 days to pay the outstanding rent. Not a text message, not a phone call, official notarized notice. If they don't pay within 30 days, you can then file a case with the Rental Dispute Settlement Center, which is part of Dubai Land Department. You cannot go directly to court. All rental disputes must go through this center first. The center will schedule a hearing. Both parties present their case, and if the ruling is in your favor, the tenant is ordered to pay and potentially vacate. But even then, they might get additional time to comply. The whole process, from first missed payment to actual eviction, can take 3 to 6 months minimum if everything goes smoothly. If the tenant contests or appeals, it can stretch much longer. Other valid reasons for eviction during a contract include the tenant subletting without permission, using the property for illegal purposes, causing significant damage to the property, or violating terms of the tenancy contract in a material way. For each of these, the process is similar: formal notice, filing with the Rental Dispute Center, waiting for a hearing, getting a ruling, and then enforcement if the tenant doesn't comply voluntarily. Here's something important to understand. Even when you win a case and get an eviction order, you cannot physically remove the tenant yourself. You must use the Dubai Court's execution department to enforce the eviction. Taking matters into your own hands, changing locks, removing belongings, cutting utilities, is illegal and will land you in serious trouble. Common mistakes landlords make. Let me walk you through the mistakes I see landlords make all the time, because these errors cost people months of time and thousands of dirhams. Mistake number 1. Sending notice through WhatsApp or email instead of registered mail. I don't care if you have read receipts. I don't care if the tenant replied saying they received it. If it's not officially documented, it doesn't count legally, and your case will be thrown out. Mistake number 2. Not giving the full 12 months notice for end of contract eviction. If you realize in January that you want to sell the property and your contract ends in August, you've already missed your window. You cannot evict at that contract end, and you'll have to wait another full year. Mistake number 3. Trying to evict without valid legal grounds. Wanting to raise the rent significantly is not grounds for eviction. Finding a tenant willing to pay more is not grounds for eviction. Not liking your current tenant is not grounds for eviction. The law specifies exactly what qualifies, and if your reason isn't on the list, you don't have a case. Mistake number 4. taking enforcement into your own hands. Changing the locks while the tenant is out, cutting off their electricity, removing their belongings. All of this is illegal, even if you have a valid eviction order. The tenant can file a police complaint against you and sue you for damages. Mistake number 5, not documenting everything from the beginning. Every communication with your tenant should be in writing. Every payment or missed payment should be documented. Every maintenance request, every issue, everything. When you go to the rental dispute center, documented evidence is everything. How to protect yourself. So how do you protect yourself from getting into this situation in the first place? The best protection is proper tenant screening before you sign any contract. Check their employment, verify their income, ask for references from previous landlords, and look at their visa status. A few hours of due diligence up front can save you months of legal headaches later. Second, use Ijari properly. Ijari is the official registration system for tenancy contracts in Dubai, and every single tenancy contract must be registered. Having your contract on Ijari gives you legal standing and makes any dispute process cleaner. Third, structure your payment terms smartly. In Dubai, rent is typically paid in checks. 1 check, 2 checks, 4 checks, or 12 checks for the year. More checks means the tenant is paying in smaller installments throughout the year. Fewer checks means bigger lump sums up front. From a landlord protection standpoint, fewer checks are better because you get more money up front. If a tenant pays 1 check for the full year and something goes wrong, at least you have the year's rent already. If they're paying monthly and stop in month 3, you're chasing 9 months of payments. Fourth, include specific clauses in your tenancy contract about maintenance responsibilities, what constitutes a violation, and consequences for breach. The more specific your contract, the easier your case if you ever need to go to the rental dispute center. And fifth, honestly, this is my approach, consider short-term rentals instead of long-term if your property and location support it. Guests book through platforms, pay up front, stay a few days or weeks, and leave. No eviction process because there's no long-term tenancy. If someone causes problems, they're gone when their booking ends and the platform handles disputes. I make 40% or more compared to long-term rentals. I have no legal exposure to tenant disputes, and I sleep much better at night knowing I'm not going to get a call that my tenant stopped paying and I'm stuck for 6 months trying to evict them. So that's how eviction actually works in Dubai. The legal grounds, the timelines, the process, and most importantly, how to protect yourself. Remember the key points. 12 months written notice through notary for end of contract eviction. 30 days formal notice for non-payment during contract. Always use official channels. Never take enforcement into your own hands. And document absolutely everything. If you're dealing with a tenant situation right now, or you want to understand how short-term rentals can eliminate this headache entirely, WhatsApp me. Link is in the description. And if you found this useful, subscribe because I post real, practical content about Dubai real estate every week. Not agent talk, actual investor experience.